All right, Michael, if you didn't hear that little robot, recording is in progress. For everybody who is watching, listening, reading, etc., this is Michael. We came from the same town, went to the same high school, actually. So it's a little bit of a different interview. Um, we kind of know each other, but we're going to do our best to make it like we don't. So I want to start by asking you about Isolated, which I just saw a few days ago, and I think you know that I spoke with KateLynn.
Yep.
Um, so first, my question is, what was the spark that gave you this initial idea? Do you remember the moment where and it's totally fine if you don't, but do you remember the moment when you were like, that's an idea that I want to play out?
So it's really interesting that you asked that. I haven't been asked that yet, funnily enough. But so this was an original concept. The catalyst for this did not come from me. It came from the director, Tyler Lee Allen, and he approached Greg Krause and I and said, "Hey, shortly after we had all worked on another film together, which I wrote as well, called 7 Days Till Midnight. We had come off of that. We had a little bit of downtime, and Tyler comes to Greg and I and says, "Hey, I have this concept for a film I want to write." He said, I want to talk to Mike about writing it. And we met, and he said, I want to write I want to do a film about a girl or a person that wakes up in a room and they're trapped and they don't know how to get out. And honestly, man, my initial reaction was, I'm not really interested in jumping into something like that because it's something that has been done so many times in so many different ways. Like, it's sort of exhausted. So, basically I didn't say no right there, but I just that was my initial reaction. I said, let me think about it. And as a little bit of time went on, I started thinking about it more and processing it and thinking about ways that that we could approach this story differently, because Tyler didn't have any other, anything other than that, so started talking with Greg, started talking with Tyler, and essentially that sparked, the line of thought in the process of building the story, of course, for anyone who's seen it, with the idea of small cast, minimal locations, but trying to maintain the integrity of a really strong story and a unique story, with a really strong a really strong female lead. So that's a very long form way of telling it, but that's sort of how the story and the script came about.
No, yeah, you're definitely more interesting than me. So the more words you have, the better. My question, obviously, I talked to KateLynn about her experience in that room, but since you mentioned minimal cast, minimal location, what was your thought on minimal cast? Did you want to add anybody else for additional context? Or do you think that it was perfect for the movie and the script that you were adapting and kind of filling out?
So, to be completely honest with you, the concept of minimal cast and minimal locations had, primarily at the start, had to do with budget. If we're all being honest, like, it had to do with budget. Said though, a very early version of the script had her, had no one else in the script. You had this person who could be this, this villain, this assailant. Did he put her there? Did he not? But there was really no nothing to that. You know what I mean? So originally it was sort of very, very closed off and very confined. And then we started to grow from there, and we started to add, the Travis character. And then we started to add, more with the Edgar character, and sort of by need, by necessity. Like, is this story essentially going to be boring if it is just her in the room the entire time? Which I think a lot of people is probably the perception of the film. And that's true for the most part, but it's, ultimately it's not, to someone who's seen the film like yourself, that that's not the case. So.
Well, obviously, like many films, there's, 3 acts. So you never know how things are going to progress. But like you said, with Travis, with the other characters that you added, were any of those, something that was an idea on your part, or any of the like locations an idea on your part, or even past that, was there anything that you were adamant about adding to the script that the others were like, I don't know, and you were like, no, I really want this in
To answer your question, yes. I'm uh, I'm I'm very adamant about specific things with stories that I write, because I want to stay true to how I want to write. Right. So if this was a film that was entirely written by me, it probably wouldn't be this psychological thriller. So I want to inject the things that I'm interested in, which are dramatic, salt of the earth, like human condition type things. Right. So that bleeds a lot into the characters. Right. So one aspect that I was very adamant about, that early on some of the other producers were kind of about, was were the colored lights, right, and how that plays out in the room. And one big reason, and I know it's not a character, and I'll get to a character that I was adamant about, but one big reason for the colored lights was because I kept trying to tell them, the other producers, that this is something that is unique. I've never seen anything like this in a film, right? In the way that it plays out, I've never seen anything quite like it. And also, we're in this room for a majority of the time in the film, so let's do something that is different, something that no one else has seen. And the main concern from some of the other producers was, well, will the audience grasp that, what's going on? And I'm a very big advocate for, like, treating your audience how you would want to be treated, right? Like, I love to figure things out in films. I love to try to, what's happening, how's it going to work out? Try to guess at the end, but not keep it to yourself. And so you just have to give your audience the benefit of the doubt that they're going to figure it out. And then at some point, if they don't, there is a sort of hey, this is what's going on. Yeah, right. So that was one thing I was adamant about. Another thing I was adamant about was the Travis character, and definitely was his character. He is all over the place, right? So the first time I wrote that character, I didn't tell other producers what I was doing, and I gave it to them, and they're just like, "Whoa, this guy is like all over the place." And I said, "Yeah, exactly." I'm like, he is so the anti-Nell in terms of like how she like holds it together for the most part, and she's very strong, and she doesn't give up, and this guy is just he like I said, he's all over the place. Yeah, so that was a big I was adamant about those two things off the top of my head for the story. Yes.
Yeah, because those really played off each other well. So I guess my question is then, not even a question. I wanted to point out, like, when you said the lights, the colored lights, that is something, like, obviously, as you're familiar with epilepsy. I have epilepsy. Those lights were a lot better than like flashing white lights, strobing white lights. So I think that was a very smart idea to go with. And that's just something that I would like to say on the platform. That way, when other people, anybody who's listening to this to make films in the future, maybe like follow the what Isolated has kind of put out there in terms of lights. Now, as far as my next question goes, I wanted to know, did you always know how you wanted it to end? Or let me rephrase that. How many times was the end of the script changed?
Okay, it's a really good question, because as there's a very big turn in the film, and it wasn't very many times. I will say that. I will say that the sort of the main points of the ending we always agreed on. It was more about how it happened, and I say this, it sounds so vague and ambiguous, but it's just a matter of not wanting to spoil the surprise. But I guess suffice to say, like, one iteration of it was that it didn't actually happen, was that it wasn't actually something that happened, and I wasn't a very big fan of that. I love ambiguity, but I think the end of this film, to me, this was the ending of the film that I was always rooting for, that I was always championing, and I don't know that it could have ended any other way for me. And then as as appropriate for the story.
Yeah, I definitely like that, because if it doesn't work for you, then how do you know if it's going to work for anybody else? So my question then next is, were you on set when it came to this? Because I know that obviously minimal cast, minimal location, director, just a couple actors. Were you, and I think you said you had a co-writer. What's the name? Greg?
Co-producer.
Co-producer. Were the two of you on set during the filming for this?
Yeah, so Greg acted as the director of photography. So he worked with Tyler, the director, to map out the aesthetics of the entire film. Greg was adamant from the start about the room being able to be taken apart like Legos, because which it was. We built the room entirely inside of a makeshift soundstage. 4-foot panels by 10-foot panels, one at a time. The ceiling was on a pulley system. The ceiling could be pulled up. The room could be basically spread apart, like so we could get dynamic shots, which was a big deal, because again, we're in the room for the most part. So yes, Greg was on set filming, operating the camera. He was working as director of photography, and I was on set as assistant director. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, assistant director is essentially the manager on set. I made sure that we got everything done that we needed to get done in the time that we had, and if not, I dealt with the schedule. So it's a very, right brain, left brain thing that I did on this, which I've done on a few films. Is the creative part is involved in the screenwriting, and then the managerial part. This was definitely at play in the assistant directing on set. So yeah, I was on set for this one.
Nice. And what about what can you tell me about your previous movie? Let's start there. You said you had a movie that you had done prior to Isolated.
Yep.
So let's slide that direction for a minute.
Okay, sure. So the film is called 7 Days Till Midnight. Greg shot that film as well. He was a director of photography on that. I wrote the film, and Greg and the director, James Suttles, we all worked together to craft the story for that one, much in the way that Greg, Tyler, and I did for Isolated. So I wrote 7 Days Till Midnight. We filmed that, and we shot that in the mountains in North Carolina, which was incredible. We shot that back in 2016, 2017. And then we had to do pickups for that. And then there was a lull pre-pandemic because the editor was working on other films. So essentially, it's just starting to make a festival run. The film started. Yep. So it's been in a few festivals overseas and here, and the hope is to have that one distributed as well sometime this year. Hopefully, more towards the end of the year. I would say that one is a dramatic sort of thinking man sci-fi. It stars actually Keith Harris, who you might know from The Walking Dead. I don't know if you know him, but he played a pretty significant role in The Walking Dead. He played a doctor, Maggie's doctor. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I do. I'm very familiar. I've seen the show 20 times. Yeah, I could pull out the comics. They're right here. Yeah, right next to my DreamWorks box. So yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. He ended up walking with them, but yeah, I know. I know exactly who you're talking about.
So our Keith Harris starred. He was incredible in that. Blake Fowler starred opposite him in that. He was incredible in that, and it's a film about Keith is the lead, and he sort of he's having sort of a midlife crisis. So he has a young son and he has a wife, and he kind of tells his wife he needs some time away to go kind of find himself again in this point in his life. So he goes to these places that he and her had both gone to in the mountains. He goes to this cabin and he goes to. And so, like I said, I don't want to ruin that one, but that one, I really enjoyed that film, and I really enjoyed writing it, and I really enjoyed working on that one as well. So hopefully we'll get to talk about that one in the near future.
That one's going through October Coast too, right?
Well,
because I've heard I've heard the name. I don't know if it's through festival runs. I'm not sure how I've heard the name, but I've heard 7 Days Till Midnight. I'm
Yeah,
not
so
sure if it's. I'm not sure if it's gone through any promotional work yet or not, or promotional.
it may have been promotion for the festivals. I know James Settles, the director, is kind of taking lead on that. But like I said, the hope is to get that one out this year as well, because I'm excited about that one too. So
That's awesome. So that'll actually come out after Isolated then.
yeah, yep.
Okay, because Isolated, if I remember correctly, that comes out early July.
Isolated was released June 14th, this past Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
June 14th. Sorry, 4 interviews
Nope.
today. June 14th. Okay, and that is on digital and VOD, correct?
Yeah, so it's
that's the same. That's the same thing. Digital and DVD.
DVD, yes, yep. It's available on DVD on Amazon, and it is available digitally to rent and buy right now on a myriad of different platforms, which we're really excited about. So yeah, it's out there, it's live.
Okay, and as far as Isolated goes, I mean, I can tell how close 7 Days to Midnight is to your heart. As far as Isolated goes, what is it about that film that really makes it feel like it touches you, or not even touches you, but that makes it feel like it is close enough to who you are that you took it on?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it has to be, the myriad of different emotions that the character now goes through. I think that she goes through as much, or at least hits the peaks and valleys, in an hour and a half and 90 minutes that most of us will experience at some point or another throughout life, right? Like, she goes through so much. She goes through fear, anxiety, excitement, curiosity, hope, hopelessness, terror. I mean, it's just in KateLynn, just the auditioning process was, I don't know if you guys touched on this, but I was kind of championing KateLynn from the beginning. She had the script early on, and she had kind of fallen in love with the script, and I thought, she's kind of perfect for it. And it was a long audition process from what I remember, from the auditions that I was involved in. And she did know that. She proved to all of us that she could deliver on all those emotions. And this film really rests on her shoulders, and I think she definitely delivered. And I can say the same thing about Lanny. KateLynn and Lanny, they're just, I mean, they're so dedicated to their craft, and they are so professional, and they're such incredible human beings. So you asked what about the story? That about the story it is connected to me, but about the experience of making the film, the filmmaking is it's unfathomable, I think, to people that have not been involved, right? Like, in making a film, like, it is so, it's so difficult and so trying, but it's also so exciting and so invigorating, so it's just like, it's this, you go on these waves, right? And if you find the right people, if you get the right people on board, you go through all those things together, and it just brings you all closer, and it develops, and it enriches friendships. And Lanny and I are he's a very good friend of mine now. He's just an incredible human being, and KateLynn and I are good friends, and it's just been, that is so enriching, that is so incredible. And that's one thing that I'll take away from this film that you won't see on screen, but that that is, for me personally, that's just I found so much joy in.
Yeah, and it had to be crazy for you seeing me interviewing KateLynn, knowing who I was.
I think I reached out. Yeah, I reached out to you, I think, after I saw that, and I was like, it's really funny, man. Like, having someone interview the star of this film that and finding out that person, not knowing until seeing the interview, that person was a high school classmate, like a hometown friend of mine. Like, I told you when I reached out to you after it, I was like, this is like full circle for me. Like, this just was such a joy to see that. And you know, like I told
Same.
you, I've been following you, you know, this last handful of years and watching what you've been doing, and you know how much it seems like you enjoy what you do, and that just makes me really happy, man. So us two coming together here and because of this is just it's awesome. It's really
I
cool.
love it. I love it, man. Same. I wanted to talk about what's funny about KateLynn is I'm actually promoting another movie she's in,
Yeah.
which is funny. Not with her. I'm not interviewing her again, but she's in the movie. She's great. Um,
Yeah.
Now you have a third movie, but you said you don't know how much you'll be able to talk about it.
Yep.
Are you able to say the working title or at all about what the general plot line is?
So uh, I was hired to, I was brought on and hired to write a script. I just turned in the final draft of it that they're going to be working in pre-production towards. I, you know, don't want to say too much about what the script is about. I can tell you that the working title right now is "Thy Will Be Done." So you know, take that for what it is. I really enjoy the script. What I really tried to lean into, and you know, early on in meetings when I was talking with the producer and when he was, you know, debating on whether or not to bring me on to help develop the story and finish writing it, or help develop the story and write the script, help finish developing the story and write the script. You know, I pitched to him like, this should be written and this should be filmed, and this should be you know, aesthetically be in the vein of like Seven and Silence of the Lambs, which are really big hitters, right? So another psychological thriller, but just so I tried to pay homage to those things as I wrote this script, and I'm really happy with the script, and the producer is really excited about the script, and they're just in the process of pulling things together, and I may or may not be more involved outside of writing. We don't know yet, but I definitely am pulling a little bit to it's being shot in Ohio, I know that, and I'm pulling a little bit to try to shoot it in our hometown in Toledo. So we'll see how that works out, but really excited about it, and yeah, hopefully we can see that come to fruition and shot in our hometown.
Let's make that happen. So, would you like to do a spoiler section of, if you haven't seen the movie, leave now, but spoilers about Isolated, or would you just like to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Anybody who hasn't seen the movie doesn't want spoilers, cut now. It's been great talking to you guys. Anybody who wants spoilers, or who has seen the movie and really wants to talk about the twist, here we are.
Right.
First of all, Michael, who came up with this? Like, who came up with the twist? When the movie was pitched, was the twist part of it to you?
Okay, so when the movie was pitched, the twist was not part of it. First and foremost, Tyler Lee Allen, the director, came up with the twist, and my initial reaction to it, because it was after a few drafts, was no, like that's way too far off. And you know, again, going back to what I said earlier in our discussion, I like drama, I like grittiness, I like, you know, but grounded in reality. So when this was first pitched to me, it was just like, I'm not a fan, right? So then, but what we kind of had set up with our agreement, there were 3 creative producers, and it was sort of like, we're going to try to, if someone doesn't agree, we're going to try to work with them and try to figure out if we can get to a place where we agree. But if there's a stalemate, it goes to vote, and it's, you know, 2/3 vote. So it didn't get to that, because what I typically do in this process is when I hear something like that, that's so far off base, when I already have a script written and I already have a story in my head, I have that knee-jerk reaction, and then I let it sit with me, and then I try to figure out ways, well, okay, if I had this idea, how would I make it work? And then what I do is I simmer down a little bit, and then I take that and I pitch it. So that's essentially what happened. And you know, good on Tyler for thinking about it, because I think it turned out to be an incredible twist. It turned out to be a backwards turn, you know, not left, not right. You're walking backwards. Like, it's very, and the thing that I love the most about it, man, is that it provides, in essence, because I went back then and picked through the entire script after we decided to go ahead with it. It provides a rewatchability factor, which I'm such a huge fan of in films, where like, once you see this twist, then you go back and watch it and you're going to notice things and you're going to hear things and you're going to see, and it's just like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. It was so weird, or I missed it on the first one, but now I see, you know, she's a robot.
Yeah, and when she got stopped, and when she got stopped, um, uh, when I was talking to KateLynn, I think she brought up something that I hadn't even thought about in the movie. KateLynn had said something about it made her think about how easily that I can't remember if she said women or people are controlled and manipulated and just completely, you know, stopped and not able to do the things that they wish to do. And that's not even something that I had taken away, you know, when watching the movie. So like you said, every time you watch it, there's different things to take away from this. So like just having talked to KateLynn, I'll see different things. Now, having talked to you, I'll see different things. So that's definitely, I 100% agree with you on that. Once I saw that things started going crazy, I was like, I started moving towards, you know how you start inching towards the edge of your seat.
What is happening?
It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool because the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, okay, is Travis real? Is Travis fake? What's going on? You know, you don't know. It's a mystery. Is there a guy that's secretly really alive and gonna saw you up? You know what I mean? Like, but you don't know what the twist is. But you never think that with the type of movie that it is, and that is, I think that is so crazy to me. I wish that there was some way to see. It's hard because it goes back and forth. On the one side, it's like it has to be a twist. In order for it to be a twist, you can't share everything about it. But on the other side, it's like, I wish there was something that you could show, or that, you know, the team could show that shows like, oh, it's more than just another. Yeah. But, you know, anybody who gives it a chance is going to be like, holy shit. And then they're going to tell their friend, and it's going to be word of mouth. And that's the point. It's like, oh, just wait till the whatever mark. Just wait till the 42-minute mark or whatever it is. But so, spoiler wise, what was there a part that was more difficult during that I guess third act, because there were a little bit, if I remember correctly, there were a little bit of special effects.
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably not something that you handled.
No.
But do you know if that made that was more difficult on set than the rest of the stuff?
Well, so it depends on which aspect you're talking about. For visual effects, a lot of the visual effects stuff was I mean, since we're just talking about it, like the glass cracking, like, so we hired a visual effects artist to do things like, you know, going through the wall and seeing the vent. You know, that shot is obviously a big visual effect shot. You know, seeing the laser, seeing the, you know, the vent, all the things into Travis's room. And then visual effect shot is the glass cracking, you know, for the skylight. We had him do that as well. We added smoke to the room because we had smoke, but it just wasn't feeling like it was enough. So we had him add smoke to the room. And then there's the big shot when she gets out of the room, when you see the projectors. So it's really funny. Like, I gotta show you just between us, like, what that shot looks like without the visual effects, because we shot it in a big hangar. And then basically the visual effects artist just sort of cut the top of the frame off, and then he built those scaffoldings from scratch. What's really funny about it is there's a building in that, you know, that Nell goes into a building in that hangar. And on top of it, when we shot the plate for the visual effects artist, our sound engineer, Sam, who's another incredible guy who was on the crew, is like standing on top of the building, like with this boom mic, just like standing there. It's just like, what are we going to do with Sam? And Greg, was like working with the visual effects artist, like, we're just going to cut him out. Like he's not there. So those things were interesting to handle. And then there's little things throughout, like when she has her little blips, like, you see the phone moving, you see Edgar's tie, which I really love that shot. Just signifying that like she's been through this, 1,000 times, so those things, it didn't seem to me like there was any difficulty in post-production with the visual effects shots. But there were a lot more than we initially imagined. And it was more of like, not shots you had to prep for, you had to green screen for, just shots like, oh, well, we shot all this practically, like now we have to plug in the visual effects. So I think we had a list. I'd have to ask Greg for specifics, but I think it was close. I want to say it was close to 80 shots, like, here and there, some little small stuff, some removing stuff from a scene, but I want to say it was done near 100 shots for visual effects, which is surprising.
Wow. So then if you were to, what I like about it is, even though it's a twist and people don't know unless they get to that, unless they watch the movie, what I like about it, even if you were not involved, because you had said that, it was initially pitched to you and you weren't really sure about it, even if you don't take on the project, I feel like a sequel could be pitched easier with the sci-fi elements to isolate it, and not even necessarily have the same actors, maybe have Nell as a supporting actress or something that ends up coming in. Regardless, I'm not a screenwriter, but what are your thoughts on that potential, I guess, is what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I think it's not been discussed amongst us, but people, when we had test screening and stuff, they had asked, they're like, it was standalone until the twist, and then it's just like, well, does this open up a whole new world, especially with the company that produces them, right? Like, so I mean, I guess sure, anything's possible. That would be strictly sci-fi, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of like, following Edgar, like David Abrams, man, his scene at the end with Edgar. I really loved writing that scene, and I really loved watching him, perform it, because that guy, it's really interesting if you think about it from the perspective of Edgar, right? Of this guy. Literally, he's just going to work. This is a day of work for him. At the beginning of the film, he's going to work, and at the end of the film, he's trying to get out of there, just like everyone does at the end of a work day. I'm just trying to go home. So when we start to hear about his life, when Nell talks about it not being fair, and he talks about, his mortgage and his kids and his, it's just like, it's so mundane and so run of the mill for him. But to her, this is earth shattering. This is like
he's some crazy villain.
And he sits across from her at the end there, and he's totally just like, aloof and just kind of, and she is just having a meltdown. And I love the juxtaposition in that scene, because I just, and it's just such an interesting thing. Like, a lot of films end with two people, is that Christopher Nolan quote, a lot of my films end with two people talking in a hallway or something. Like, a lot of films end with that, but to have them on two different planes of existence and frames of mind was just really interesting to me. So I definitely wanted to make Edgar, and Tyler talked about this as well, just make Edgar like, he's just trying to get out of there to enjoy his weekend. And he doesn't really want to deal with whatever she's going through, because to him, she's a product. She's not a human being, which I think is the total essence of the film, is that at what point in their evolution does this being, because it is a being regardless of whether it's a robot or a human, like, does it capture a soul, the essence of a soul? What is the essence of a soul? Is it memory? Is it feeling? The idea was that Nell got to the point, she was an advanced model, the most advanced model at that point. So she got to the point where she started having feelings for another model. which was Travis. Like, she was worried about him. She cared about him. She, when she experienced what he did in the room after she got out, she was, saddened. She was devastated. So it's like, is that not now a human being, right? Like, that's the big thing to me. And then Edgar's indifference at the end is just, it can be taken as like, literal, like, or he just, like, wow, he's just totally indifferent and he's just evil. Or it can just be like, well, the reality of the situation is like, she's, I don't know, she's, whatever, made of metal and plastic and, whatever the case may be, whatever that perspective would look like. So that to me was really fascinating at the end, was just, at what point, and I think that's a big point, I would hope that's a big point that people that watch it will be talking about. Well, she was a being, she did have a soul. Well, it's like, well, no, she's a robot. That's the whole, that's the whole idea.
So I think without even realizing it, you just perfectly pitched the sequel, whether it's called Edgar or not. It's essentially this guy with a mundane life, not a Monday life, a mundane life. And he goes to work every day, and you see him watching the screen of all these robots in these rooms. He's like, oh, he has to go handle this robot. He has to go, and it can be prior to Nell's breakdown, or it can be whatever. You know what I mean? It could just be called Edgar. Like, I think a film like that could be really interesting, and the sci-fi aspect would be from jump, but also there's horror elements there. Like, like depending on how it's approached. I feel like you just pitched it to me in a way that it's like, I want to watch that.
One other thing that I haven't mentioned is a good friend of mine, Zach Griffin. He wrote the Hello Stranger song. So that's an original track that he wrote for the film. So the track that's played at the end credits, the track that is played on the phone in the film, the track that Nell and Travis both have a connection to. And I kind of was jokingly like talking to the producers at one point, once we got the finalized version of that film, because Edgar's listening to part of it at the beginning of the film when he's driving to work. And I'm like, you know what? I also think to make Edgar's character more interesting, to add to him, he's an aspiring folk singer songwriter, and he tests his music on the robots when he goes into work. so that's what the track is.
That is awesome. And I'll have you, I'll put his music and a link to at least that song in the article. So we've pretty much wrapped up Isolated. Can you talk at all about the movie that you've got coming out in the future?
7 Days Till Midnight, or are we talking about the one that's not yet to be produced?
Not yet to be produced. Sorry, not yet to be produced, because we talked about Isolated and 7 Days to Midnight.
Yep. Yeah. Right. So like I said, there's not a whole lot I can get into, just because, like I said, I was hired to write it. Like I said, it's just going to be another psychological thriller. I would say it's in the vein of Seven and Silence of the Lambs, which.
Sorry, I already asked you about this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my fault. My memory is terrible. Luckily, there's editing. That's half my job.
Okay, so we're good.
So then my question is there anything else you'd like to plug? Obviously, there's lots of people that you work with on this, and you work with on your other projects, and you have other things going on, whether they just be, screenwriting. I'm sure you have other projects that you're working on as well. Anything else that you'd like to plug, or anything that people don't ask you about? And anything people don't ask you about Isolated that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I don't know that there's any burning question that I haven't been able to answer in some way. I just want to say that like I touched on before, this would not be possible without every single person that had a hand in it, right? Like, I don't, it does, you know, director, writer, producer, director of photography, like that, those are the big, you know, and stars of the film. Those are the big, attention grabbing roles. But, you know, everyone that worked on the film, from, you know, the person that, you know, helped us out with food, or the many people that helped us out with food, all the way to, you know, all the way to the top, like I said, you know, the producers, the investors, the executive producers. It never has the saying rang more true, I think, than in film, and specifically independent film, is that it takes a village. It takes many villages. It takes a lot of people to come together and make something like this. And I am just happy that we were able to see this through, and we were able to get it to the point where we can point to it and people can go see it for all of those people. And that's how I want to continue to work like that. That's where I find the joy in filmmaking. So
that sounds like a perfect way to end. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate your time as always, man. It's been incredible to catch up.
Hey, man, thank you.